Alright, we're finally back to normal this week. That's good.
Yeah, we got rid of that hobo Sean finally.
Yeah, that's good.
Alright guys, we're rolling. And action.
I'm Matt.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Vince.
Guys, I'm here, Sean. God.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of KORRACAST.
Today we're continuing our 3-part review of The Promise.
Alright, Sean, what happened in part 2?
Well, turn your listening balls up, because here we go.
Your listening balls?
I think he said listing balls.
In part 2 of The Promise, Toph works to teach a ragtag bunch of students metal bending with the help of Sokka and his motivation bending to save her academy from a school of firebenders. Aang comes face to face with the official Avatar Aang fan club, but Katara becomes jealous of all the attention. And Zuko continues to struggle with his identity as Fire Lord as he discusses leadership with his imprisoned father. But peace threatens to shatter as the Earth Kingdom army marches on the city of Yudao and the Fire Nation rallies the fleet to face them.
I actually like this one a lot. I actually thought that this was a lot more interesting than part 1. One of the storylines I really kind of thought was cool was the Aang Katara, them visiting their colony, and the Aang fan club, which was... fangirls were kind of annoying, but I really liked the whole idea of, Aang having this baggage that Katara is never really going to be able to understand. And this is kind of the first period in his life where he's been able to be happy since all the crazy stuff happened. So it's kind of a relationship problems, but on a whole other level, Ryan, what do you think about this issue?
Overall, I thought it was a little weaker than the first one. The first one, I thought there was a lot of good setup. One of the reasons I didn't like it as much is that they got into metal bending. I thought, oh wow, they're gonna reveal some cool secrets about what metal bending really is all about. But when when all is said and done, I still don't have any greater insight of what metal bending is. Why were the students able to metal bend? Because she believed in them? That was it? There was no conceptual understanding of why she was able to and why other benders before her were not.
Yeah, I kind of, I guess, have to agree with Ryan. I thought this was a little weaker than part 1. I mean, in general, the characters and everything I still like, and I thought they did a good job. They're doing a great job of kind of bridging the gap between Avatar and Korra, where Avatar is a much more fun, very childlike adventure, and Korra is, your teenager years, and you're tackling more kind of mature and struggling with issues. But the one thing I thought about this particular issue was that it just felt unnecessary completely. I haven't read part 3 purposefully, but if you remove this, it felt like we wouldn't have missed anything. The Zuko Firelord stuff was interesting, but it's all stuff that I felt was small enough that they could have tacked on, or added on anyway, to the other issues, and it made it a 2-part, both parts being really strong, as opposed to being something in between where nothing really happened.
Speaking of Zuko and Ozai, I probably thought that was the strongest part of this chapter, actually.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So part 1 ended on a pretty neat note. The whole idea of Zuko going to his father for advice after everything that happened.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and for one reason that I thought the whole flashback, to me, was an obvious allusion to Trigun with the spider and the butterfly, where you have kind of like these two conflicting ideologies, and kind of how they resolve, a similar situation in 2 completely different ways.
I've never seen Trigun.
Look at that.
He's right.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, it's time for you.
I mean, yeah, get out. He's not right about Trigun. No, yeah, I mean, the illusion, the whole, is there a moral center, is there moral rightness to letting one thing live when you're basically taking control agency over these things that you don't have control over? Firelord Ozai kind of makes an interesting point in that he says there is no right or wrong. It's just what you choose. Now, and what I like about that is that the initial reaction from that is that, okay, that's very tyrannical, dictated. But honestly, from my perspective, I also think that it's very it's very imperialistic to think there is one right way to do things and say,
right,
this is the right way. This is the moral absolute. That's the Avatar way. That's basically what the Avatar says.
Right.
Like, I'm right, everyone else is wrong. That's very imperialistic.
Well, it's something that we've seen in real life. The whole mandate of heaven concept. The whole idea that you have the God-given right to rule, and because of that, everything that you do is correct.
Right.
It gets into all kinds of philosophical, like moral relativism, like what determines what's right and wrong? Is it the universe? Is it a God? Is it society? Whatever,
Right, and it's like, Ozai happens to be a bad guy, But
Right.
what if the Avatar was a bad guy?
Well, just because the Avatar is a bad guy doesn't mean he's a
Bad guy.
So this is kind of the first interaction that we see between Zuko and Ozai, with Ozai being more of a father figure than an actual Fire Lord to Zuko. It's interesting to see.
He was at some point an actual father to him.
He was, but then he tries to kill him a bunch of times in Avatar, so he's not.
I mean, I think this is where I was talking about, too, the transition between, okay, this very simplistic, romantic adventure, good guy, bad guy, and turning to Korra, where it's a little bit more shades of gray.
He's got a lot of problems, man.
Yeah, he's got so many
First off,
problems.
hey, I mean, he don't got no girlfriend no more. That's done.
I called it.
There was some flirtation going on, I think, with Zuko and Suki. Is that gonna happen? And is that leading to Sokka and Toph getting together? What do we think?
I've been speculated.
We
since
don't know.
The dawn
We
of
don't
time.
know Lynn's father.
Yeah.
Could be Sokka.
I don't want to talk about that.
What do you want to talk about?
It's just there to be there because it's
it's like-
more like real because people break up in real life and people get together with other people. But I was never really attached to Zuko and Mai in the first place.
I mean, I wasn't attached to him, but I just felt like they had hit that note multiple times before about, oh, you're not telling me everything, Zuko. Oh, I'm sorry. You're not telling me everything, Zuko. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think this goes back to the backpedaling, the backtracking that we talked about in our last review, that we need conflict in the story.
And they need shipping things.
Yeah, we gotta have shipping things to be
And
shipped.
this is a thing that
It
you
is
can
a thing.
ship.
Yeah, you can ship it, and it gives something for Zuko to be stressed out about, on top of having to rule and talking to his dad
Right.
and his strained relationship with his friends and everything else. So why not?
Right when Zuko goes to Ozai at the end of part 1,
Okay.
my initial reaction was, why doesn't he go to Iroh for advice? I mean, like, it seems like Iroh is much kinder and wiser. He's going to Ozai just because he was a Fire Lord.
I'm not really sure why he's not going to Iroh in the first place. He trusts Iroh, but they
It
don't...
is odd almost. It seems like they're purposefully not showing us Iroh.
Yeah.
Like, they don't need to. They could draw any character in any. They don't have to hire a voice actor. It seems weird that they're purposefully leaving Iroh out of this.
Iroh was in line to be the Fire Lord,
Yeah.
and he was a big war general. Like, he probably would know what to do as Fire Lord, even though he didn't officially sit on the throne.
I mean, he led the Order of the White Lotus, right? I mean, he was one of the big higher-up leader
Right.
guys in that,
Yeah.
so he knows how to lead things.
I mean, I guess ultimately what it amounts to is how do you think is going to affect Zuko in the climactic, moment in the coming issue.
Well, obviously we kind of know, because we've seen in Korra Season 1, when Iroh Mini says, well, my grandfather would trust the Avatar's advice, so obviously he's going to end up being a good guy. But I like the setup, like, did any of you guys think that moment where he puts the fire out in the throne room was neato? You guys remember that?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, and there's those moments that I wish there was a little bit more of in this issue, because they were kind of curious, like, oh, I'm intrigued by that, but they also felt like there were setups without payoffs, or payoffs without setups. Either way, I felt a little like, I wanted more.
Yeah, well, I think, it's sort of going towards what you were saying before, just kind of building his character. Like, this is, the flames and the grandioseness of it all is like, that's the Fire Lord. This is what he's about. Fire, power. And then he's like, you know what, that's not me. And then he extinguishes the flames.
Yeah, and
He's
it's all like you said, it's a build-up, and it's leading up to something. And you mentioned earlier in this review that this episode felt kind of like filler. I have to. It does kind of feel like that this all should be one story, though. I think the reason why I liked this one better than part 1 was that we were actually getting into the character development that you would see in the middle of an episode of Avatar. I mean, if you imagine this was an episode of Avatar, and you cut it into, 8-minute chunks or whatever they would be. The first one's going to set everything up in the conflict, and in the middle you're going to start seeing the 3 different storylines. If all 3 parts of the promise were one episode, I think it would feel more complete. It would feel like a better flowing story. Right now we're seeing the different 3 parts of a story arc as individual stories, and they're not really making an attempt to take each one and giving them their own arc. It's just, here's part 1, here's part 2, here's part 3. So I guess I feel like we need to wait until we read part 3 to see whether these 2 parts work or not, whether this is filler or what's what. Let's just wait.
Yeah.
All right.
So, okay, the question this week for a review response is, we want to know what you guys would do. Would you save the turtle crab, or would you let the hawk eat it? And why?
Okay, now let's look at the answers for the last viewer response question.
I would do what Zuko did, although I would have done it a bit more diplomatically. Team Avatar was clearly in the wrong about the colonies, letting their grudges against the Fire Nation speak rather than thinking about what's best for the actual people involved. If I were Zuko, I would be asking Uncle Iroh and the White Lotus for advice. I wouldn't be speaking to Ozai under any circumstances, even if my life depended on it. Ozai cannot help run a nation in a way that would help keep peace and harmony in the world. If I was in Zuko's position, I would have gone to Aang and talked to him as soon as I realized the huge problems the movement was causing. But honestly, even though Zuko has made a lot of progress, he's still a very emotionally scarred person. He's done things by himself for years, so it makes sense that this sort of conflict would pop up.
I would build Zuko a time machine to go back in time and perform an amateur vasectomy on Ozai to make sure Azul will never be born, so Zuko can have all the honor to his heart's content, and also dance the tarantella with Uncle Iroh while sipping tea on an iron-bellied dragon.
Alright, those are some good responses. Nice job, guys.
And we also want to let you know about some of the side projects we've been working on in between the times we've been filming these episodes.
So we've been working on a film project for the last couple months. It's a little bit different than some of the stuff that we've been doing. It's called What the is Postmodernism. It's kind of a comical look at art history and philosophy. It's a little bit like Drunken History meets Death and Return of Superman, if you've seen any of those videos. Yeah, it's a little off the beaten path, there's some profanity, but give it a watch. I think you'll like it.
You won't.
And this other video we got up, it's a documentary. We do this Ginger Brawl Battle Royale every year, and this year we decided to document it and put the competition online for the world to see the horror. Enjoy!
So I had some tacos the other night. Did not go well. I don't even know. I think that was the biggest problem.